Hello world and welcome to this edition of the RONJIRU Japan podcast, the place where we talk about everything related to Japan, and we talk to people who love Japan. Anyone who set up a business knows it's a difficult challenge, but anyone who set up a business in Japan knows there are special challenges to setting it up here. Today, we'll be talking with Kevin Hamilton. He's a businessman. He's also a creative director in corporate communications, has a long history here, and someone I've known for a long time. So I'm very happy to talk with him today and explore what it's like to have a business here in Japan. Our guest is Kevin Hamilton. I'm your host, JT, and this is RONJIRU. Let's discuss Japan. Kevin Hamilton, thank you for joining us on the RONJIRU Japan podcast.
Thank you, JT.
Very nice to talk with you here today. I usually like to start asking my guests to cover how they came to Japan, when it was, what they've been doing since they've been here, and what brought them to where they are today. So, could you let us know, when did you come to Japan? What have you been up to?
Okay, well, that's a long story. I came to Japan originally in 1985, so that was 35 years ago now. And that's about it.
That's about it. Working at Japanese companies?
I'm originally from Nashville,
Mm-hmm.
and I developed an interest in Japan from a young age. And then when I got into college, I met some Japanese students, and my interest in Japan intensified. And then I had an opportunity to come here in the mid-1980s, and I did. Thought I'd stay for a couple of years, but got involved in advertising work, copywriting work, and just started enjoying living here and doing the work here and getting things done here. Suited me very well. So before I knew it, time just sort of got away from me, and it's just sort of made it my career and way of life.
So you've been in advertising the whole time, or done other things as well?
Well, an amalgam of things, but the mainstay has been the advertising work. Not long after I came here, I answered an ad in the Japan Times, and it was an advertising company that were making advertisements and things for communications materials for Japanese companies for overseas markets. And so I joined there and had a really good mentor who taught me advertising copywriting. And then I did more than that. I did a lot of other aspects of, the advertising business. And so I've worked at a variety of companies. I've worked freelance and worked for some major companies. I also spent some time working inside an advertising department for a big Japanese multinational company.
Oh, well, how was that?
Well, it was big and it was multinational.
Yes, but it was client side instead of agency side.
It was client side, so that's that's something I've been on both sides of the table,
Mm-hmm.
and there's benefits to both sides, I guess. But then 5 years ago, I started my own company with an American business partner, and primarily doing copywriting work or content development work for the web and for marketing campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've grown up to about 6 people now, and we work with a lot of outsourced people, creative people. So I suppose there's about 15 or 20 people of us that are working together pretty much week to week.
When did you start your company?
In 2015.
So
we started,
5 years.
So coming up on 5 years.
5 years. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Most new businesses they say 3 years is the tough part, and after that, it gets easier. Has it gotten easier?
Well, it's never easy. It's never easy. But there's always, these Japanese companies, always have something that they have to publish in English. So You know, sometimes times are good and sometimes times are hard, but you know, there's always something has to get produced. So we can always find, you know, work pretty much what we're doing.
Do you have a favorite field in terms of clients? You do a lot of both B2B and B2C and also government work. Is there something that you find more enjoyable than the others?
Well, yes. Most of the things that I've done over the years has been B2B. It's very sort of straightforward and conservative and kind of executive to executive, you know, mindset. But we have done a little bit of B2C, and we're doing more and more. What we're doing is B2C over in sort of the entertainment sector, the music business and music products and merchandise and things like that. And that's something that we're just now getting started in. And so over the next 5 years, it's sort of a new dimension of our company that we want to grow.
Yes, because I know you, I can bring this up. You have a music background from way back in university days or shortly thereafter, if I'm not wrong.
Well, yes, before I came to Japan, I'm from Nashville and was raised there. And I think career-wise, originally I started in, you know, graphic arts, printing.
Yes.
I was a press operator for a while, and I did various things in the graphics art business there. And in university, I studied the music and entertainment business and joined a company that was actually doing music marketing. And then, it was then that I had the opportunity to come to Japan and came here and got involved in advertising. And of course, advertising also involves, you know, certain dimensions of music development and the music business. So it's still, you know, sort of been something I've been connected to.
Sure. I'm quite happy for you to mention the name of your company. Maybe give it a plug, let people know what it is that you do, and how you're moving into the music business in addition to the sort of traditional both online and offline advertising creative production that you do.
Right.
Yeah.
We're called UBIQ, and what we were established to do were basically help companies, whether it's, you know, these big Japanese companies or even advertising agencies that need help, you know, with English language, primarily English language, you know, materials or, you know, advertising, you know, campaigns and things like that. And, you know, in the past, a certain amount of foreign people have been hired, you know, inside of these companies to do that type of work. But it was, especially 5 years ago, the trend was that type of work was outsourced. So, that's one of the reasons we established the companies, because there was a need for it, and it was something, you know, we were good at and we can do. And as we got started, you know, primarily we were originally just writing English, you know, for a variety of needs, and then we got called upon to like make a video, and then to do this and make a brochure, and you know, just different types of work, you know, started coming in. And then we hired a video, you know, editor and a graphic designer. And we hired a full-time, you know, translator and copywriter. And we hired a woman that's, you know, responsible for, you know, handling the clients. So we've sort of grown up to, you know, a little core unit of really good people, bilingual people, international people. We don't actually have Japanese on our core team. It's something we want to add, you know, over the next year. But primarily with doing work for overseas, it isn't that critical. And we all speak well enough, you know, to deal with Japanese clients who can't speak in English.
So busy.
Well, yeah, busy. You know, it's creative work, so it's fun and interesting. And we work with a lot of different outsourced people that you know, come through here, and we get influenced by, you know, what they do for us. And we do work with quite a few, you know, major companies across several sectors, so we get exposed, you know, it doesn't really get boring. Everything is every company is doing something different. And although, you know, at the highest level, I suppose, the corporate level and corporate governance and corporate communications at that level, they're all trying to do the same thing.
Sure enough. What kind of publications and things does your work appear in? I guess obviously online is going to be on a website, but for some of
Yeah, sure. It shows
videos and things like that.
It shows up on company websites. It shows up in their YouTube channels. It shows up. We do work for major media. Our work goes into like Wall Street Journal, BBC World, and CNBC. So it goes out into major media.
So a small company that does big work for giant corporations in giant media. Not bad.
Say that. Well,
happy 5th anniversary. You're getting very close. Being that diverse and doing that much various tasks and work for various companies, what made you decide to get to expand even further into the entertainment business?
Well, it's I see a need, actually. I'm personally interested, and I just find it interesting, and I like being around musicians and artists. Being from Nashville, that was just part of growing up.
My first guest on my podcast was from Nashville.
Yes, I know him very well. He's a notorious fellow.
Yes.
But yes, I see a need. Right now, there is, millions of people all over the world that, can't get enough of Japan. It's not just the anime or the manga. It is the music. It's everything. And there's so much about this country that is yet to be discovered just because it's cloaked in the veneer of the language. Just information about it or about the people or about an act is just not available in English. And there's just no way to discover it. And so, I do corporate communications work. That's just basically simple communications in Japanese in English for Japanese companies. You can do the same thing for Japanese artists. And, I think the major artists, who work for the big, the big stars, they've got, the resources to do whatever they actually choose to do strategically, globally. They have access to people that can get their message out in English and can help them. But there's this whole middle tier of artists here that, that aren't in the mainstream limelight every day, but they're just, amongst the world's best musicians. They're just great players. They're creative people. They're great performers. And, they just can't, get any exposure. So I want to help them.
Is that the category that's often called indies?
I suppose you could say indies, yes. I mean, there's kind of multiple, definitions and dimensions to, indies music. And to a certain degree, there's a major aspect of indies music, but then there's also an indies aspect.
Yes. What is the most common genre?
But it doesn't have, it doesn't have to be like, indies as much as just an artist, for example, that, is a great player, is a great, composer, is a great performer, puts together their own image, takes care of their own sort of communications, whether it's through social media, maybe even press their own CDs and sell it at their live events. They've got their own little core fan base that follows them around. But they're just, limited by what they themselves personally can do. And so I would like to sort of set up an infrastructure where, artists and acts like that can continue doing what they're good at. And then, I could come in and help them with the global dimension, getting first of all, getting information about them out there in English.
Sure.
And second of all, getting them, hopefully putting them in a situation where they can grow an overseas fan base the way some other, Japanese acts like Baby Metal even, or Bandmade. There are a lot of actually Japanese acts that if you see it on Facebook, there are these fan base groups that's completely fan operated, and there's just hundreds and thousands of people that are just into it, and then these people of course connect with the bands themselves.
So are you suggesting that, let's use the United States as an example, that there's a lot of interest in Japanese music in the United States, which is one of the reasons why you wanted to?
Well, I think there's that subculture of anime. there's a subculture of people that just think everything about Japan is great, and they come here. I actually have younger family members who come here every year. They're just totally into it, and they come and see. They come and see the same thing every time, but they also add something new each time too. And but it's always pop culture oriented stuff like the Ramen Museum and everything related.
Is there a genre of Japanese music that's not popular? I mean, obviously, anime is, as you said, is...
I don't know. My attitude about music is it's a personal thing, personal taste thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are people out there for everything that's out there, period. And, I would imagine the least accessible Japanese music would be enka,
Oh, yes.
But when you're actually living here, it's kind of, you're exposed to it. And,
Sure.
I don't know. I've never heard of anybody overseas sort of like, being, enka fans, but it wouldn't be unusual. I mean, people are polka fans.
There are people. I've seen them on TV.
Yeah. That's actually, you're right. You're right.
Foreign-born people who come here.
Yeah, they come on. They
actually,
put it on TV, and they're actually
he was
singing
from the
those songs,
U.S.
yeah.
Actually, I believe the guy, and
I know who you're talking
fantastic voice. I can't remember his name right now. He's absolutely great, and he's Enka Pro, right up with the top peoples. Put out albums and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to do some Enka as well. Obviously, there's a market for it, or else he wouldn't be in it.
But speaking of just the personal taste aspect of music. We live in an age where, like in global music, there's a wide variety, certainly. But, what is considered sort of the mainstream, I think, has always sort of been narrow, but it's more narrow now than really it's ever been. I think, a lot of if we just look at Japanese music, there's like the AKB48 phenomenon,
yes,
and all the emulations of that, that is what it is. You either like that or you don't, or you're indifferent to it.
Sure.
If you're a jazz fan, you're likely to be more of a very serious music listener, at a technical level. Because it requires effort to actually appreciate, and understand jazz, I think, And there are other musics that are, in that way as well. But, the point I'm trying to make is I'm not so interested in those mainstream things that, is already out there. I want to find these sort of like hidden gems.
I see.
That has something a little bit unusual and maybe unorthodox about it, but it's still accessible and not just like crazy off the wall or anything, but it's kind of like, whoa, that's different. And it's kind of like a little bit challenging even in some cases. So but I do want to help. I do want to help the musicians first and foremost because, the average musician, they're great and gifted and special, just because they're a musician. And people like that, often... don't really have any acumen for the business side of it. And so they get taken advantage of and, they don't make the money that they deserve to make from, the art and the work that they do.
It's very difficult to succeed, not just in music, but also in television, entertainment, or in comedy here in Japan, unless you have an office, a talent agency that works with you. So in a sense, UBIQ's new explorations into the world of entertainment production is going to be, in a way, like a talent agency or a record label that the people can rely on to help them get their stuff out there.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that talent agency would be the right model, but we're talking to a record company in the United States based in Denver called Color Red, and they're coming into the Japanese market. And so it's likely we'll be tying up with them and helping each other in some way. And they, first and foremost, it was started by, a musician who, was, philosophically, his headspace is the same as where I am. It's like he could see that, there's all these great musicians that all they just want to do is play. But they're not able to sort of like live by just playing just because they don't have their music business, their business house in order.
Sure.
And they don't know how to get it in order.
Right.
They don't have their publishing in order. even simple things that's just the basic thing every musician should have taken care of. It's complex and not so easy to deal with, It requires lawyers and, all kinds of, layers that don't really mix well with, the creativity of making music. Right. So Color Red is really basically established, help, basically be a haven for artists to come in. They've built a studio, and so people can come in and like play and record, and they just basically record live in the studio and put out records, and they've put out dozens of records so far. And they want to grow, and they want to get involved in like every type of, genre of music. And again, it just comes back around to what I was, the original point I was trying to make is, people like what they like. And, as a small sort of enterprise, wanting to help, musicians, I just want to focus on sort of things that I can really relate to, the type of music that, really gets me stirred up and going, and not just music for music's sake, to be honest.
Sure. You were also a guitar player.
In my younger days, yeah. So I was in a band, and and I was more into like harder, edgier music, industrial type, darker music.
Darker music.
Yeah.
I wonder how that works. You mean metal?
That's one of
one of many
dark things.
One of many dark things.
Yeah.
You, with your this new sort of enterprise into the entertainment music industry, is UBIQ basically going to be outbound, or is there also an inbound component?
It's both.
Yes.
We're looking at, as I say, so the common theme is something like unusual, unorthodox, but still accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And we're interested in Japanese acts, and we're also interested in foreign acts. We're based here, so the most important thing is, what we can do for Japanese acts going abroad. Mm-hmm. But, we do know people in the industry here, and we do, associate with, the opposite, foreign acts that are coming in through here that the Japanese love or are discovering. And, we want to help, them as well. Mm-hmm. And so, we're starting out, basically we'll release, one Japanese act and one foreign act as sort of to get our model started. And then we'll just add other acts from there going forward.
How did UBIQ start?
UBIQ started because, let's see, there was a gentleman named Michael Hoover that I had known since the early 1990s. He was a translator back when I met him. He's originally from Baltimore in the United States. Mm-hmm. And we did a project together for Yamaha Musical Instruments. And then that was 92. And then we sort of kept in touch over the years. In some cases, we did some other work together. He joined a big Japanese companies and hired me to make some things for him. Then we just kept in touch, and we were good mates. And then in 2014, we bumped into each other in Shimbashi, just in the middle of nowhere. Hadn't seen each other for a couple of years.
Shimbashi is a great place to bump into people.
Yeah. And, surprisingly, he told me he was quitting that company. He'd been there for a long time. And he said he wanted to start his own company. And so then he said, well, hey, why don't we just talk and see what we're both up to? And I was at a stage right then that I had a freelance business, so I couldn't take it to a higher level without some help or some partner. And so it just kind of, both of us were in the right place at the right time. So I merged my freelance business with, a sort of a company that he had already established, and then we changed the name to UBIQ. Mm-hmm. And we started out doing some simple copywriting oriented work, and then we both went out together and started making sales calls, and before you knew it, we started picking up some really nice work, and we've been at this for 5 years now. And
yes, nice little tight boutique,
creative production boutique is probably the best way to define it.
Mm-hmm. What were the challenges in setting up UBIQ and getting momentum or traction as you started out?
Well, we already had it because, as I said, I had a freelance copywriting business. Mm-hmm. So I had like multiple clients, and I was doing work regularly. So it was literally just a matter of like going to them and say, okay, I'm establishing a company here with a business partner. And then when they see that, oh, you're doing that, that's great. No, you've got help here. And then they could see that there's more capacity involved. So, as the new UBIQ, company, I think we just looked more attractive. And then, as I say, we just started adding. We added a full-time copywriter and translator, and then we added a full-time graphic designer and video editor, and then we hired a full-time account handler. And right now, we've basically got all the core basis covered, and we're moving right along.
So in a way, it was a reformulation of two existing businesses. Not one might have been a company, one might have been a freelance operation.
Yes.
It was a reformulation of the two, a synergy.
It was, and the synergy really worked. And I actually knew it was going to work because I knew the person, Michael Hoover, very well.
Sure.
And I sort of, we both had worked together, enough over the years to know what we were both getting into as far as like the personalities and, strengths and weaknesses of each other.
How important is Japanese language ability in working in the particular industry you're in?
I think it's critical.
Yeah.
I think that's critical, and I actually think that it's critical to have spent time working inside a big Japanese company.
Which you have done.
Which I've done, yes. And actually, the decision-making process, all the things that are taken for granted inside, a Japanese company, when you've experienced it, and then you go back outside and then you're trying to work with a Japanese company. If you're trying to get a budget approved, that's one of the most frustrating, aspects of doing business here. If you've had experience inside Japanese companies, then you're basically okay. You understand the process, and at a certain point, the money's going to roll in. You've just got to get started with the business. You might have, somebody, who's your biggest fan inside, the client. And they're doing everything they can to get things moved along. But then there's some kind of, reason that, they can't, move forward. Having been inside, I can imagine like 15 different things like, oh yeah, so it's sitting on so-and-so's desk, or,
Yes.
But
you're
when you're
being
not,
very diplomatic.
when you're having this, I am. But I just think that the language skill, absolutely. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect. You don't have to be at a translator level, but you do have to be able to talk to people, and you do have to be able to, I think, stand up and make presentations. You have to be persuasive in Japanese. You have to be, I guess, what is it, empathetic, you have to understand enough about, Japanese, the stresses that they have. There's just a lot of things. There's just a lot of restrictions that apply to, business here.
Let's talk about them.
Okay.
Some of the restrictions. For example, what do you think? The ones that you're referring to?
Well, I think it's the dominance hierarchy, it's probably the main one. There's, nobody's ever really equal, I think, in these organizations. Somebody's always got an up on or down on somebody else, right? And
vertical.
Yeah, it's strictly vertical, right? Mm-hmm. Regardless of what is said, it is and it's also a very top-down sort of culture, in contrast to what conventional wisdom says. Well, it's bottom up. It's not really. If you get decisions made at the top, things move very fast. If you try to get things rolling from the bottom, it's extremely slow and might just never work.
And if you try
3 years later.
And
5 years later.
I've experienced very similar things. And if you try to get that decision from the top to move things through very quickly without moving it up from the bottom through the proper channels.
That's right.
That's right.
It's a pincher movement.
It's a pincher movement. And it becomes a very negative thing. It will make you enemies. And
that's right.
And
that's
it can actually set
you
back in your career.
Even if you did a good thing, ultimately, you'll be penalized for it. It's not by any means necessary when it comes to getting things done.
Sure. Right. Process oriented.
Oh, yes.
Very much. Yeah. How about UBIQ?
The culture that we're trying to, put in place, first and foremost, starts with, self-motivation, the ability to organize one's schedule and not needing to be micromanaged. I mean, we can micromanage if we have to, but we don't want to. We don't want to be working with people that need to be told what to do. We tend to hire really smart, intelligent people that know what they're doing, give them the tools, the resources, and the guidance, and support they need to do it, and then get out of their way and let them do it. And that's working out reasonably well for us so far. Yeah. We live in an age of like hot desking, and there are just a lot of people that are, kind of like free and moving around with their laptops and, their,
Sure.
The digital devices, and you can literally work anywhere, anytime. And we want people, here at the office, every day, on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're ill, or even if they've just got a sniffle or something, and instead of bringing your sniffle into the office, just work at home, and you still should be able to have exactly the same output. If there's a meeting, you can Skype you in, so we've got all these tools. And so we're very much a physical office, but at the same time, I think remote working is an important part of the culture.
Especially
I do
age
it
of
quite a lot.
Coronavirus.
Well, yeah.
That's a little bit scary.
It's funny you say that, because yes, that's what's happening. I mean, there has been this sort of talk about, okay, when the Olympics come here in 2020, we don't need to, all the people commuting to work, and people are going to have to like volunteer to, we work remotely at home. And then there's sort of, there's some people are like, oh no, it's going to be too big of a disruption. That would never work here in Japan. Well, now they don't really have a choice. With the coronavirus, it's a lot of companies that said, stay at home, and they're working from home, and they're finding that it's not really that big of an issue.
Sure.
So, it's, it's becoming, even that is becoming Japanese, I think, in its own way, just that method of working.
What is the meaning of the word UBIQ?
Well, it doesn't really mean anything. When I was searching for a name, when I was coming up with a name, the most important thing for me was that it be easy for the Japanese to say,
Mm-hmm.
and easy for non-Japanese to say. It derives, of course, from, UBIQ, which is the Latin word for, I guess, ubiquitous, everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that works fine for what we're doing, So if we're helping Japanese company, communicate everywhere, UBIQ, it makes sense as a name.
What's next after you get this entertainment portion built?
I think what's next is literally, it's one thing to find artists and make those artists' music available. It's like how to, it's going to be a big enterprise to put a system in place that's going to allow people to find that music,
Mm-hmm.
purchase that music. So I actually want to explore podcasts, like using maybe a podcast show about Japanese music artists. A format like this, where the artist and a host, a bilingual host, could sit down and talk to a Japanese person and have them say whatever they want to say, and know that people overseas are like, able to understand what they're saying. They can say it in their own language, and the host can say it for them, for example, or you can lay in subtitles. But I think a recurring show where, as I say, even similar to this one, where every show is a different artist talking about themselves, and you can, be exposed to them and their music.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the real next goal is to get some kind of publicity, operation in place like that.
I think it's a good idea. Podcasting is interesting because, like we're doing right now, my audience gets to know you. I mean, all the great things you do, but also you, like as a person, what you think,
Mm-hmm.
what your opinions are about things, and it's very human and very warm.
Mm-hmm.
By having a podcast, artists who put out a CD or put out music on iTunes or whatever, it's the music. There's no person there. It's just the music.
Yes.
But having a podcast format, somewhere where you can
Yes.
talk, extract from them strange, quirky things about them that add that human element, I think it's a great idea.
Well, that's what I want to do. And part of the people that we're working with is, also thinking about the same idea. So we're going to see what we can do to make it happen. I don't, fortunately with, this type of, gear and the technical aspects, it's not a money, it's not cost prohibitive. You do need good ideas, and you do need to be able to bring in, you need good people.
Yes. It's tough to get guests, to be honest.
Really?
It is, yes. It's tough to get guests in Japan.
I'm sorry it took so long to return your call.
Yes, I know. Asshole. Anyways, it's tough to get Japanese guests because this is actually something we should explore together as we're talking about this, since you brought up podcasting.
Okay.
It's not as common here in Japan as it is outside Japan, nor is it as well understood. There is a market for it, of course, but a lot of people that I've spoken to, trying to get a lot of Japanese guests on my show, are reluctant to be on camera, or reluctant to have their name used. And it's a real challenge because there are some fantastic people doing fantastic things, but to get them actually on screen in some sort of a format that can be shared with the world is a lot more difficult than one might think.
I can see it because, they sort of, many are just over the top when it comes to, like, oh, that's personal information. Oh, they'll take pictures of everything, but they don't want any pictures taken of them, so.
Mm-hmm. So I guess in your case, if they're already musicians that you'll be talking to, or people that are trying to get their stuff out there,
I'm hoping they'll be exhibitionists, yes.
There'll be no inclination to stay anonymous.
Yeah.
Very good.
I would expect, yes.
Let's talk about people who are interested in coming to Japan to work in a place like, for example, a place like UBIQ. What would be your advice or your thoughts that you might say to somebody who's considering that?
Well, always know before you go. I think that language skills are important. You don't have to be a perfect Japanese speaker, but you do need to put some effort into sort of figuring out some basics so that you're not completely shut off when you get here. And I think certainly having a real interest in Japan is important. It's a unique place in its own way. I mean, all places are, but Japan, because it's been sort of isolated compared to most other countries, it sort of developed its own civilization and its own way of doing things, and those need to be respected.
So you've been here 35 years.
Yeah. Don't say it like that.
Okay. You've been in Japan a long time.
Okay.
What is your favorite, let's say, 3 things about Japan?
Well, this is in no order.
Yes.
But I mean, certainly, this is an easy one, the food, because the food culture here is phenomenal.
Nobody dislikes Japanese food. I've never met one.
Or even if you do, it just means you haven't been exposed to enough of it, because there's everything under the sun, right? So yeah, the food definitely. I mean, to a large degree, that might be what's keeping me here. I definitely, respect the safety, the overall sort of respect for, other person's property. We've all heard stories, and it's happened to me as well, where, I've lost my wallet and, try to retrace my steps, and either at the retail shop or the nearby police, station, they will have it, and all the money will be in there. That, is just an endless, source of respect.
That happened to me many years ago. I put my bag, and it had my passport in it, and it had my wallet, and some other personal things. And I put it on the rack on the top of, above the handles on the train, where you stand, and walked off the train, forgetting that I had put my bag up on the rack. And I was terrified. My passport was in it.
Yeah.
That's a scary thing when you're passportless in a foreign country.
That's right.
And so I went to the station master, told him I forgot my bag on the train. It's got everything in there. I'm kind of stuck. I'm in real trouble. And he had a team of other station masters waiting at the final station on that train line. They walked into the train the moment it arrived at its final station, got my bag, took it off. Everything was there, all the money, passport, and they said, come pick it up. It's waiting for you. That's pretty sweet.
I hear stories like that, probably at least once a week. I just hear it all the time. I even heard it just the other day. Somebody came in and I was talking to them, and their mother was visiting and, from the States, and same thing, just this went missing. They retraced their steps, bang, got it right back.
Very nice.
Now that's the second thing. The third thing is, the third thing, again, there could be 100 things, but I think the third thing, the top three would be, because I was here, and experienced the 2011 earthquake and sort of the way people behave when something, that drastic happens, and the discipline and sort of the helping of each other, and yeah, the standing in line and it's a highly stressful situation, and don't know what's going to happen next, and I just think it's great. It's just this, the fortitude required to actually behave that way at a time like that, because you could just feel the fear in the air, at the time, like the several days, afterwards, and because there's all the aftershocks and
the uncertainty,
and everybody's sort of in a state of shock anyway, and even the ones that didn't experience, like I did, and you saw those images of the tsunami, the tidal waves coming in. It's kind of like, takes a while for that to register in the brain, at the same time that you don't know what's going to happen next. And everything seems so surreal.
It was a magnitude 9.0 earthquake.
Well, it lasted so long. It lasted
5 minutes almost.
Depending on where you are,
yes,
even longer. I think down Tokyo area here, you have 4.5, 5 minutes. I mean, that's a long song,
For a musical person, right? That's not a tune I like very much. So what's next for Kevin Hamilton?
You'll be able to find me in Tokyo. I enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy working with a lot of different people and a lot of creative people. And as I say, Japan, I just really, Tokyo fits me well. It's just an exciting place to be. It's always changing. It's a bit noisy. In fact, I read the other day, it's the noisiest city in the world. I don't like that so much about it.
I don't either.
Yeah. But yeah, it's, people like us, you and me, we're, of course, non-Japanese and never will be Japanese, but we've managed to sort of like find our own, niche here that works for us. And there is, of course, as international people living in Tokyo, there is a international subculture of all major cities around the world. This exists, but the average Japanese doesn't know about it. There's just, there's subcultures everywhere, the whole international layer. And even people from different nationalities, can sort of mingle around, in ways that they couldn't make where they're from.
There's always something for someone here.
There is.
For everybody, something for everyone.
There is, and I just find that, stimulates. It's invigorating. I can get points of view directly from, people. And, that's one of the good things about being able to speak Japanese is that, it's great to speak to Japanese in Japanese. I'd prefer to speak English, if someone's English is better than my Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking Japanese with foreigners who are here who do not speak English is actually quite a satisfying thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to just not even think about it, but just talk in Japanese and talk about something. And otherwise we wouldn't be able to do that because they don't speak English and I don't speak their language. I really like that.
Do you ever get outside the city? the great city of Tokyo and its
I'm getting out more and more. I've always been a bit of a workaholic. Whenever I got some free time, I didn't want to go anywhere. I just wanted to chill. And there's plenty to do in Tokyo and Yokohama area and Kamakura. Within 45 minutes of Tokyo.
Sure.
There's so many places you can go.
Quick train ride,
you can do. But yeah, that's a better answer to your question. What's next for me is I would like to just hop on a train or a plane and go somewhere and rent a car and drive into deep Japan. I'd like to actively do that rather than just I'm going somewhere on business and maybe I'll take an extra day and see something. It's no, let me just forget about business and go enjoy this country,
the countryside and the local food and all of the scenery and sights.
Yeah.
Congratulations on 5 years of successful business with UBIQ.
Thank you.
And it's always good to talk with you. Thank you for being a guest on RONJIRU Japan.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you having me.
Bye, Kevin.
Okay, goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the RONJIRU Japan podcast. If you like the show and want to learn more, check out www.ronjirujapan.com. That's www.ronjirujapan.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter and watch the videos of the episodes on our YouTube channel. All the details are on the website and in the description for this episode. Keep on following the discussion. I look forward to talking to you again in the next episode. From RONJIRU Japan in Tokyo, I've been your host JT. Until next time, o genki de ne.